This is another in a series of Honorable Roy Grimes explorations. The Democratic Party has a long and complex history with civil rights. For much of the early 20th century, the party was a coalition of often conflicting interests. Southern Democrats, many of whom were segregationists, held significant power within the party. This made it difficult to pass meaningful civil rights legislation. However, a powerful alliance began to emerge within the party. Black Americans, Jewish Americans, and labor unions found common ground in their fight for social and economic justice. These groups recognized their shared struggles. They understood that an injury to one was an injury to all. Black Americans, facing systemic racism and disenfranchisement, saw allies in Jewish Americans who themselves faced a history of persecution. Labor unions, fighting for fair wages and working conditions, saw the fight for civil rights as inseparable from their own. Together, they formed a powerful force for change. This alliance was essential in pushing the Democratic Party towards a stronger stance on civil rights. Jewish Americans, with a long history of social activism, played a key role in funding and organizing civil rights efforts. Labor unions, with their vast membership and organizational capacity, provided crucial support for boycotts, marches, and voter registration drives. This coalition was instrumental in passing some of the most important civil rights legislation in American history. The alliance between Black Americans, Jewish Americans, and labor unions was a testament to the power of solidarity. It showed that people from different backgrounds could come together to fight for common goals. This coalition was essential in advancing the cause of civil rights and helped to reshape the political landscape of the United States. Their story is a reminder of the importance of coalition building and the power of collective action. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 stand as landmark achievements of the civil rights movement. These acts, hard-fought and hard-won, were the culmination of decades of struggle and sacrifice. They represented a turning point in American history, marking a significant step towards fulfilling the promise of equality for all. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This landmark legislation prohibited segregation in public places, banned employment discrimination, and desegregated schools. It was a major victory for the civil rights movement and a testament to the tireless work of activists who fought for equality. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote under the 15th Amendment. This act banned literacy tests and poll taxes, which were commonly used to disenfranchise black voters. It also authorized federal oversight of voter registration in areas with a history of discrimination. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 abolished the discriminatory national origins quota system that had been in place since the 1920s. This act fundamentally changed the demographic makeup of the United States. It opened the doors to immigrants from all parts of the world, prioritizing family reunification and skilled workers. These legislative victories represented a major step forward in the fight for civil rights. However, the struggle for equality was far from over. The legacy of these acts continues to shape the political and social landscape of the United States. The 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, also known as the Hart-Celler Act, is often cited as one of the most consequential pieces of legislation in American history. It fundamentally changed the face of the nation, ushering in a new era of immigration and transforming the demographic landscape of the United States. The act abolished the discriminatory national origins quota system that had been in place for decades. This system, rooted in racist and xenophobic ideologies, favored immigrants from Northern and Western Europe, while severely restricting immigration from other parts of the world, particularly Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The 1965 Act replaced the quota system with a preference system based on family reunification and skills. This meant that individuals with family members already residing in the United States, or those with skills deemed valuable to the American economy, were given priority in the immigration process. The impact of the 1965 Act was profound and far-reaching. It led to a dramatic increase in immigration from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, transforming the racial and ethnic makeup of the nation. The act also had a significant impact on American culture, cuisine, and society, enriching the nation's tapestry with diverse traditions and perspectives. Section 4. The Reconstruction Amendments, a Foundation for Equality. The Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the United States Constitution, were adopted between 1865 and 1870, following the American Civil War. These amendments were designed to ensure equality for formerly enslaved African Americans. They represented a radical departure from the pre-Civil War legal framework that had sanctioned slavery and denied basic rights to Black Americans. The 13th Amendment, ratified in 1865, abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime. This amendment was a monumental step towards justice, formally ending centuries of chattel slavery in the United States. However, its impact was soon challenged by discriminatory laws and practices that emerged during the Reconstruction era. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves. This amendment was crucial in overturning the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision, which had denied citizenship to Black Americans. The 14th Amendment also guaranteed equal protection of the laws and due process of law to all citizens, laying the groundwork for future civil rights legislation. The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, prohibited the federal government and each state from denying a citizen the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. This amendment was intended to ensure that Black men had the right to vote. However, its implementation was met with fierce resistance in the South, where discriminatory practices like poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses were used to disenfranchise Black voters. Section 5. The Backlash Jim Crow, the KKK, and the Fight for Survival. The period following Reconstruction witnessed a brutal backlash against the progress made in civil rights. White Southerners, angered by the loss of their pre-Civil War dominance, enacted a series of laws and implemented terror tactics designed to disenfranchise and subjugate Black Americans. This era, known as the Jim Crow era, was marked by segregation, violence, and a systematic effort to maintain white supremacy. Jim Crow laws, enacted throughout the South, mandated racial segregation in all aspects of public life. Black Americans were relegated to separate and unequal facilities, from schools and restaurants to restrooms and water fountains. These laws were designed to enforce a racial hierarchy, placing white Americans in a position of power and privilege, while relegating Black Americans to second-class citizenship. The Ku Klux Klan, a white supremacist terrorist organization, rose to prominence during this period. The KKK used violence and intimidation to terrorize Black communities and maintain white control. Lynchings, cross-burnings, and other forms of racial violence became tragically commonplace. Despite the constant threat of violence and oppression, Black Americans refused to be silenced. They formed their own institutions, supported each other, and fought for their rights through legal challenges, protests, and acts of resistance. The struggle for civil rights continued, laying the groundwork for the movement's resurgence in the mid-20th century.